Can you hear me? Ooh, that's better. Okay, welcome back after lunch. I hope you're all refreshed. And now I'm going to safely send you all to sleep for the next few hours, okay? No, that's not going to happen. This afternoon is a unique experience, I think, of the European Facility Management Conference. I believe it's unique to this conference. We have a very strong research track. We have some excellent research presentations for you. And I'm very proud that I chair this research element of EuroFM. So I'm Matthew Tucker. I'm the research chair for EuroFM. And I'd like to introduce you to the afternoon's proceedings. So what we first have is, after I give a short introduction, we're going to have a roundtable discussion for you. The roundtable discussion will look at some of the future thinking in FM from some of the key researchers in that area. After that, we have a series of poster presentations for you. The poster presentations will be quite short, about 10 minutes each, and they're going to look at different aspects of research that is going on across Europe. Okay? I'm quite proud as well that if you look at the research profile of the researchers that are going to be talking to you this afternoon, there are 14 researchers, 50% of female, 50% of male. And I think what's really nice is, on top of that, you're going to see a mix of what I would call rising stars, young researchers, not necessarily in terms of age, but in terms of their profile, in terms of their contribution to FM and to doing research. A lot of them early career researchers. And in the mix there as well, we have some very experienced people as well who have presented here year on year. So I hope you can see that and appreciate it, and I think it's a really excellent feature. So what I'm going to do now is shut up and allow you to hear our first session, which is a roundtable discussion. It's going to be moderated by Sergio Vega here. So Sergio is an academic. He's a professor in the Technology University of Madrid. And for those of you who know me, I'm a Liverpool football supporter. So Sergio and I, we've had our differences lately. We've only just started talking again today. I think we're on good ground now. I think we're back to normal, but I'm still a little bit sensitive. So if you see me keeping a distance from him, you'll know why, okay? It's nothing personal, it's just football. Okay, so Sergio, I'd like to welcome you up, and the roundtable participants as well, yeah? Okay. Enjoy it, everybody.
Thank you, Matthew, for your introduction. It's a pity I don't like too much football, but I see you very passionate, so feel free to come to Madrid whenever you want and enjoy the Leases, and for sure you'll be much happier in Madrid. Okay. Welcome to this roundtable about research in the future. And before introducing my colleagues, I'd like to define a general approach for this roundtable with the different topics we could discuss. It's completely open, it's a suggestion. For instance, should be interesting, from my point of view, to identify main areas of interest related with research and facility management, but in both ways, interesting for researchers and also interesting for the market, for professionals, for industry, because we all are aware there are a gap among researchers' interests and market necessities, and I suppose we all agree that it should be interesting to reduce this gap and strengthen the relationship. So this could be a topic to be discussed. Another interesting topic could be identify existing barriers to get funding for research. Research is not for free, requires funding, and H 2020 programs is difficult to get funding. In fact, I'm frustrated with the H 2020 program. And another topic that could be interesting is how we could take advantage from the synergies that EuroFM can give us, and how we could improve the relationship into the EuroFM association in order to take advantage from these synergies. So we could discuss on these topics or any others. I encourage to all the participants to ask questions, to give us opinions, your thoughts through the STREAMER's app. And to begin, I'd like to draw a general approach about the different topics related with research in facility management. And looking for a general approach, a general umbrella, I think that probably the most useful topic should be the sustainable facility management approach through the triple bottom line approach with social, economic, environmental topics. Social topics as well-being and comfort improvement, healthier and safer environment, resilient cities, risk and disaster management, corporate social responsibility, economic topics as added value in facility management, assets optimization of total cost ownership, improvement of workplace productivity, risk and opportunity management, and related to environmental topics, building cost-effective operations, cost-effective retrofitting, lower site impacts, digitalization with BIM, integrated workplace management system, GIs, and the data exchange for smart cities, energy, water, rubbish management, sustainable mobility, BIM integration with life cycle cost, life cycle assessment. So there are many topics of research, many interest areas for research, and you are invited to give ideas, give opinions about what should be the main interest areas for research in the near future. So, Michaela is an architect from the University of Eindhoven, and now is researcher at the Institute of Facility Management, and she's specialized in digitalization and emerging technologies, as BIM, Internet of Things, smart cities, so on. So, would you like to share your poster with us about integrating life cycle sustainability analysis with BIM? It's okay?
Yes, thank you for this.
Okay.
My research is about sustainability analysis tools such as life cycle costing and life cycle assessment, which are addressing the economic and the environmental aspects of sustainability, as you have mentioned. Both methods are very helpful for facility managers and also real estate professionals, architects, to help them make informed decisions about the buildings, but also the infrastructures in early design phase where it matters the most. And my research considers how the real benefits for society and urban smart development and facility management emerge when these lifecycle tools are integrated with new technologies such as building information modeling. And I strongly believe that in this way it will be so much easier to compare different solutions in the design phase and to choose the one that has really the minimum life cycle costs and also the minimum environmental footprint. As you can see on the screens, I'm not go very detailed into the research laboratory. So the methodology was quite complex. So we did different phases of research to grasp different views of also the stakeholders. So expert interviews in number 9 were conducted, and afterwards the results were tested on a larger scales of around 80 participants. And at the end, because of the practical nature of the topic, we thought it would be of great a benefit to test the results through a small case study and develop a model that, or at least the first steps in defining a model of this integration. The first round of analysis, so I switch now directly to the findings as time is quite short for this, and it has revealed roughly at the beginning the two main aspects in order for a successful integration of lifecycle sustainability tools and BEAM. And first is collaboration. That is very important. The process of enabling these simulations with technologies, both environmental and economic, involving BEAM, is definitely not limited to one professional, not the facility manager, not the architect, not the sustainability consultants. But on the contrary, as the expert interviews have shown, it is the result of the collaboration between several professions. And you will see that in the graph, the first graph left in the middle of the poster. That really shows the complexity of these relationships. We have also been looking at the awareness of both lifecycle costing lifecycle assessment and BEAM, as without having a real knowledge and awareness of these new tools, it will be difficult to have a successful result. But the main, findings were that roughly a couple of factors that play a role in the integration were revealed through semi-structured questions of interviewees, and we have identified three categories. There are important things to consider at the strategic level. For instance, what is the role of international standards and guidance? What about LC standards, IFC, so BEAM standards, and also the importance of supporting decision-making, meeting the governmental sustainability requirements. Then, of course, there is a lot to consider about applications and processes. Since we talk about new technologies, then things need to be changed. And currently, there are a lot of sustainability simulations conducted at the BEAM, but a lot still needs to be improved with regard to material comparison, estimating the energy performance, and so forth. Last but not least, it's very important to consider the technical and the operational level. So basically, what is the workflow of getting from A to B? What are the softwares, the apps we need, and what new jobs, roles needs to be created. Afterwards, based on these findings, we have looked at the factors that play a role in integration, and I just want to mention the three most important of factors which enable the integration, and then the factors which are a challenge. So I'll start with the negative ones. There is a problem with databases of costs and environmental data, because these are not linked with the BEAM models mainly. So, and the second is that there is many times limited accessibility to information. Last, that cannot easily be improved, there is currently a lack of technical skills and qualified professionals who can conduct this analysis. But luckily, there are a lot of factors which can enable and push forward the integration, and I'll just mention the most important: increased accuracy. Well, now precise building quantities can be extracted and analysis conducted, but also an increase of collaboration, transparencies, the possibility now to conduct cost estimating, calculate energy performance, and so forth. And we have at the end used some of these factors in conducting a small case study that was just showing a few important points from the practical point of view, which I will not further develop about classification system and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michaela. It's very nice, and I am really passionate with this kind of research. In fact, we are beginning to research at UPM in how to get information in a cheaper way to model existing buildings. Yes. Through micro drones and laser data capture. What do you think about the future in these topics? Because it's clear that modeling existing buildings is not cost effective till now. Yes. It's too expensive. But if we have a cheaper way to get modeling of existing buildings, should be great, I think. What do you think about this?
Yes, definitely there are new ways of capturing reality data, and I'm aware of some consumer versions of laser scanners which are accessible for price. Maybe the accuracy is a few millimeters lower than the high professional laser scanners, but still it produces, as I tested myself, a good data file with a lot of point clouds, which can be then easily combined with photogrammetry, so drone captured data. And there are even a start now in automated generated floor plans and not so complex 3D models from this data.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll come back later. Yes. to you. Our second colleague is Knut, PhD, professor, assistant professor, and coordinator of Oslo Met's Bachelor in Facility Management, and with a wide experience as researcher in many topics related to facility management, real estate, workplace design, digitalization, and so on. And if you are so kind to share your poster about advantages of facility management involvement in design construction process to improve later building operation, should be great. So, Knut, please.
Thank you. Could you please change to the... Okay. This project was made together, or this paper was made together with Alenka Tamilotov-Salai at NTNU in Trondheim. And it's based on data from the Oscar research project. The background is that in Norway, commercial building and public buildings, they usually stay in service for about 60 years in average. But of course, there are variations. You have, as we were told earlier today, you have office buildings that are demolished after 20 years because they are obsolete, or you have schools that are demolished and replaced after 30 years, and you have other buildings that serve for hundreds of years, but in average about 60 years. And then the strategic analysis and the early phase planning and the construction phase is basically short but quite important episodes in the life cycle of a building. And if you look at the total costs, the life cycle costs of what takes place in a building, for instance, a hospital, then the operational costs of a hospital is so high that after 3 to 4 years, you have actually spent the construction costs per square meter. So the construction cost means actually very little, for instance, at the hospital. So at the Oscar project, we tried to, which was initiated and run by Multiconsult in Norway together with NTNU and Oslo Met and lots of partners from the industry. We tried to figure out the importance of these early phases and how to create buildings that, to establish buildings that create value for both owners and the users of the buildings. And in the first work package in Oscar, we looked at the early phase planning and design phase, and we ran a lot of literature studies, ran case studies, and we ran a national survey. And in that national survey, we found that the investment in the building was the most important, but even the owners, they were also concerned about the life cycle costs. But surprisingly, both the owners and the users were not especially concerned about the adaptability of a building, which is very important for a building's life cycle costs and for the use of the building, the ability to change its function and form and footprint. So that was quite surprising. And that is also a bit disturbing because most of the important decisions, they are actually made in the early phase before you start building, before you start the construction process. So then we tried to dig deeper into this in the second work package, which was about the construction and production phase of buildings. So we made 2 research questions here. We thought about how does early involvement of FM competencies in the construction phase and early phase planning, how does it affect the outcome of the construction project? And similarly, how does the transfer of information, the red squares, where you have, if you can see the construction and planning process of a building as a kind of relay run, where you hand over the baton to the next team. How do this transfer of information influence the outcome of the project? So the method here applied is that we ran a national survey where we got 1,034 respondents. And to analyze these data, usually you apply, to see if there are correlations here, you usually apply what is called Pearson's rule, where you correlate one-on-one question to see if there are any patterns. But in this case, we used what is called canonical correlation, which means that you have a list of questions as an independent variable and a list of questions as a dependent variable. And to combine this, you have the total effect of a lot of questions. And when you use correlation measures, you have what you call effect size. They come like t-shirt sizes. That you have a small effect size if you have an effect of a correlation of 0.10. And you have a medium strong effect size if you have 0.30. And you have a large effect size if you have 0.50 or more. And this canonical correlation is like running a multiple regression, but then you can also have multiple dependent variables, not only one dependent variable. So it's a quite useful method, but it's not that much use because it's a bit tricky in, for instance, SPSS. It's not on the menu. You have to use syntax to get access to that method. The respondents here, it was not a randomized study, but still it's quite representative. We got 80% male respondents, 20% females, which quite well reflect the Norwegian construction industry. About 640 respondents have been into construction of new buildings. The others have been in refurbishment and renovation of buildings. And they represented the whole spectrum from project managers, consulting engineers, architects, facility managers, and so forth. And the type of buildings they based their answers on was the whole scale, from housing, offices, to schools, prisons, hospitals, sports facilities, and so forth. What we found here is that there is strong correlation between early involvement of FM. And we saw that we had effect size there about 0.5, which is a strong one. And similarly, when we looked at the transfer of information, it was even stronger. It was almost 0.6. So there is a significant effect. So what we have found here in this big data material, there are effects, but we have to follow up with new studies. Because now we have only shown there is correlation, but you can't say there is causality. But it can't be causality without correlation. But then we have to design studies so you can check out where and how do these possible causalities work? Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question, because in US, UK, and in other countries, it's mandatory to, in public projects, to incorporate FM experts into the designing process and the architect's team. Do you think it's a key driver to improve building operation in the future?
I think that is. I think it's a very good idea to make it in Norway in big projects about $500 million Norwegian kroner. Then you have to make net present value calculations for to present for the Ministry of Finance to estimate the life cycle costs. And similarly to include operational people in the planning team. That's a very good idea, because then you can avoid solutions that give you high operational costs.
And how do you think we could influence in the School of Architectures to change the focus in the designing process only and include the FM and building operation from the very beginning in the design? Because I think it's a key driver for the future, and I don't know exactly how to influence in the architects and the School of Architecture. What do you think?
I think it would be a good idea to if it's not part of the architectural educations, I guess there are differences around, but that they actually also focus on the function and the use of the buildings and those activities taking place there, and also in choice of materials, because choice of materials can have a huge impact on for instance, operational costs and how much they need in maintenance.
Okay. Thank you. We'll come back anyway. Our next guest is Anu Karnoven. Thank you for coming, and especially because your fellow VP Stout has failed in the last minute, and you have to make her presentation. So thank you, double thank you for you. She is civil engineering and one of the managers of the research and development at real estate education in Finland. And you are running in your institution Erasmus Plus projects here towards sustainable and energy efficient real estate education. And your poster, I think, is about this topic. So please, is this one?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So I will tell very shortly about the survey and our project, because I don't know so much about it. But we started last year, and there's partners from Finland, Netherlands, Germany, Slovakia, and Estonia. So different European countries. And we have already done this survey where we tried to find what kind of education concerning sustainability and energy efficient we need. And we have already learned that there is quite big change and differences between these countries. In Finland, training needs to be concerning about the indoor environment. Indoor environment was one of the main results in Finland, but not in other countries. So there is quite different fields of they are changing every country, and we are still analyzing what is behind those results, because we haven't yet analyzed all the questionnaire results. But next I think next week or in 2 weeks we will have next meeting, and then we know more about this. It might be the one reason might be that every country sent the questionnaire to the professionals, and then they have to choose only 3 choices. So that's the reason that which one is more important. I think that's one of the results of this questionnaire. I don't know if you can see, but there is those results in that poster, but they are quite small ones, so I hope that everybody can read and make their own analysis about the results. And I hope that Virpi will be tomorrow here if you want to discuss more. She will be here and you can ask about the results, and I hope that we can get also your analysis, what might be behind the questionnaire.
Thank you, Anu. For me, it's clear that education is the key for sustainable facility management in next generation. But how do you think we could improve awareness in the facility management industry and in the users of the buildings from the sustainable point of view? Do you follow me?
I think we need education to everyone, from the kids, all the school levels, and then the professionals. We have to discuss, and also I think the clients the owners are the main thing also. After that, the facility managers can discuss about the situation, and then we can all go to the same direction. But I think that we will need education in every level, from the kids to school and university, and also we can't forget, of course, the professionals, the facility managers. Their key point is that they have to do it. The owners say what they want, but they don't know how.
I think that it's a global task to make people aware about sustainable use of energy, material, and so on. But I think that facility managers are especially important in this role, make people aware and users aware about a good usage of buildings and materials.
And they need a lot of knowledge about the facility management and how all the materials works, and how to renovate, how the energy efficient, how the indoor climate goes. They have to know quite a lot in different kind of fields. And of course the legislation is also very important, because there is going a lot.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back to you in some minutes. And our last speaker, Carmel, PhD on Innovation and Facility Management and Associate Professor at NTNU University. And your paper deepened into existing gap between energy modeling in design and real energy performance during the operation. Could you tell your poster? Should be great.
Yeah, okay. I think my poster quite complements some of the things Knut was saying, because the main thing that I'm looking at is that the energy performance gap and the specific story I'm telling is related to a deep renovation of a care home. And in this, they had a real big objective to reduce energy demand in the care home by at least 50%. So that was one of their main goals. But also one of the goals was to make it a functional care home for all the staff and users within it. So in my paper, I present interviews from different practices, architects, engineers, facility managers, and I also include the building owner and users of the care home, primarily staff. So in the paper, I try to give this, I try to argue that there are different utopian visions of what is an energy efficient building coming from different practices, and they don't always align perfectly. And I give the example of, within the project context, of an architect. And and I tell the story of how the architect wishes to reduce one of the energy, change one of the energy solutions in order, which wouldn't make it optimal for reaching the target, but it impacts on the architectural value and the aesthetics. And the architect, being involved in the project, is able to kind of get his viewpoint across and negotiate that it's important to kind of have this balance and compromise between architect and energy efficient solutions. And then I also try to give the perspective of a contractor who feels who's very enthusiastic about doing an energy efficient building, but is very limited because of the very project phased approach. It's very time oriented, so he ends up kind of not being, it gets frustrated because he would like to be more innovative with the solutions he's introducing, but the definitive phase approach within projects kind of goes against the idea of sustainability and being a holistic vision, because he doesn't get that holistic picture. And at the time when I was talking to him, the renovation was complete and he didn't know how the users were using the building. So this is one of the frustrations he was having. Then I spoke to the facility managers to get their viewpoint. And when the building went into operation, some of the solutions didn't work. It didn't meet the functionality of the building. And their feeling was that they kind of lost sight of the goal within the project of that this has to be a functional building and it has to be a building that the users can use. But some of the energy solutions went too far and the building turned out to be quite more technical than it necessarily needed to be. But also they kind of felt, they also didn't understand why some of the solutions were introduced. So some of the solutions had very valid reasons for being introduced, but because they're not involved, they don't have that knowledge and understanding of why these solutions are being introduced, and they immediately are operating the building, but also going through in parallel a learning process. So I kind of think rather than have this dystopia that happens in the initial months of operation, where there is the construction is almost going on, still going on in the operation phase to fix defects, maybe having a bit more integration with facility managers and having them involved in the project process will get this knowledge and understanding of how the building is used, but while also making the building energy efficient and meeting the goals. So this will kind of work more in line with the vision of what is sustainability and being more holistic and integrated with other practices. So, yeah.
Thank you. It's really interesting. And once more, I think facility management education is key.
Yeah.
To save energy and to approach the real performance of the energy of the buildings to the modeling previous developed. And it's key through the energy management and especially with the awareness of the users of the building, because probably the most important gap among modeling and real energy performance comes from the users' usage of the buildings. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. There needs to be that understanding that the users have this impact and their behavior has an impact on energy. And I think there is that understanding in the project, but sometimes the contractors or architects thinks the user is adaptable. And that's not necessarily the case, because behavior is very difficult to change. And also, when you think about the core business of if you're asking someone to change the behavior, you're indirectly affecting the core business of an organization. And as Knut was saying, the project is for the short term, and the operation is for the long term. And the core business ideas need to come into the project aspects, not just that this is a project about energy efficiency, but it has to come in with the overall picture of what the organization is about.
Well, thank you. Well, we are going to debate now something, and I encourage to the audience to give some questions, opinions, thoughts about all these topics. We have just one question only. So the question comes from Susan. Do we give the sufficient skills to sustainability in real estate and facility management today? Or is there in your country a huge need for more and different education? What do you think? For instance, Anu?
Yes and no. You can have the knowledge or that kind of education when you are studying, but you can easily live without it also. So it's still, it's part of the education, but if you not choose that one, you might be outside of the knowledge.
Okay.
It should be more that you have to have more knowledge, but still isn't so.
Any more comments? Not?
As far as I can see, it seems to me that if you look at sustainability, energy efficiency in buildings is fairly well taken care of because of the legislation and technical requirements for new buildings. But if you look at sustainability concerning people, workplaces, that is less taken care of and should be more emphasized in the educations, especially in for instance, further educations.
Mm-hmm.
Because that influences actually more people, even if energy efficiency in building influences all of us, but that's also the case for the people using buildings.
Mm-hmm. Any more comments?
Can you just repeat the question? I'm sorry. I was just
The question, do we give the sufficient skills to sustainability in real estate and facility management today? Or is there in your country a huge need for more and different education?
I think, I think because sustainability is always developing, like the new technologies and new legislation, I think Norway is quite good at and the facility managers in Norway are quite good at being aware of these aspects. But I agree with Knut, there isn't enough legislation within the operational phase to act as a guide of what needs to be done. So in some ways, it's what's happening is more kind of grassroots kind of understanding, and building on initiatives.
Okay. A question for another question. Do you want to add something?
To add, I will believe in Switzerland it's the same as in other countries, and there are a lot of sustainability certification systems now in place, but they stop when it's about operations. So there's definitely need to be a bit more education, so improve on that side.
Okay. Another question for you. How do you visualize the implementation of Internet of Things and big data and the exchange of data among buildings and neighborhoods in order to improve building operation, energy efficiency, sustainability in the next smart cities?
That's a big question. Well, definitely it's not an utopia, so it's happening, and we have to deal with it now to change our ways of working and our behavior. After all, the Internet of Things is about adding sensors to everything in our cities, and afterwards connecting these sensors via Internet with the help of protocols, of communications, and so forth. And definitely it will add a lot of value for facility managers and real estate professionals by helping them in very precisely monitoring and the tracking the environmental footprint and all that. So yes, smart cities are on the way. So it's been also discussed about GeoBeam now from BEAM. So how to connect all the BEAM models and have a common data environment for cities that would definitely improve the way the people live and the neighborhoods. So
I think this exchange of data is a key driver for the future energy efficiency, for instance,
yes,
and for sustainability. We have just read an PhD thesis some months ago, and she demonstrated that you can save among 13 and 50% only exchanging information, nothing more. Existing buildings, if they exchange key information, not the whole information, key information, you can save up to 13, 15%. So I think that for sure will be one of the most interesting research areas for the near future. I don't know if somebody want to add something?
Yeah, like I think it's really like the big data and the real-time information. It's really exciting. Like I've done some research in big data, and I was kind of curious about your work as well in terms of like, because it's very fast and high volume, and there isn't really a check of accuracy of how good the data is. Are those kind of challenges that you see within your own work? Or
challenges,
but also
yes.
The data is a bit overwhelming as well.
Yes, I probably agree. Recently we have been working on a use case in the plant room of our building to connect the sensor data with the BEAM model, which was created via laser scanning technique, to a CAFAM system and to mixed realities. So by using HoloLens to really see in place the consumption and the live streaming of data. So we didn't got yet to that point, but I think this will be the next step. The challenge, as you mentioned.
Okay, another question for you. Don't you think that sometimes we fail in the energy approach in existing buildings? Because we try to save as much energy as possible, but at what cost? Because perhaps the focus should be more centered in the cost-effective operation and cost-effective retrofitting measures. What do you think? Because sometimes I think we are thinking in the wrong way.
It's a tough question. I think it's good to kind of not just think in one way anyway, because if you focus on energy efficiency alone, and as seen from the work I was doing, you're leaving out loads of other variables which also impact the organization. So I think looking at the cost effectiveness of energy efficiency systems is important for energy management. But I think there are so many variables as well, and I think there is it's that learning process needs to happen as well. That is how to kind of really make the most of the systems that are being introduced in a cost-effective way, and which also benefits the organization as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any more comments?
I have one.
Yep,
Yeah.
please.
Concerning Internet of Things, that gives us a lot of opportunities. For instance, you can have heating, ventilation, air condition, and services on demand. But on the other hand, it also presents some quite substantial problems concerning privacy. And that has to be solved, otherwise we will have an Orwellian society where sensors anywhere, which can become quite nasty.
It's interesting, Anu.
Yeah, it was almost the same thing, and that needs a lot of education and a lot of knowledge concerning about the facility management. You have to know a lot. You have to know all about the digitalization and all the energy efficient and sustainable and materials, and how the whole building is working, how all the techniques are working, and so
yes, very wide
it's
area.
Yeah, it's very wide.
Changing, because we are finished in the 5 minutes. Some comment about how we could improve the relationship into the EURFM community and take advantage from synergy among the participation of researchers, educators, professionals, industry, because I'm not sure if we are doing the correct things to take advantage from this synergy. What do you think?
I think we have some opportunities, but also some challenges. The first challenge concerning research is that facility management is not considered an important subject by the research funding agencies. You see it in EU in Horizon 2020, and you see it, for instance, in Norway in the Norwegian Research Council. We managed to fund the Oscar project by luck, because it was a user-driven innovation project, but not a traditional research project, because the traditional research funding go to things like energy and health and aging. And that's very and competitiveness, and that's also very much part of the Horizon 2020. But the good thing is that actually by combining the forces here through EURFM, it's possible to make studies, for instance, comparative studies across Europe, which can show decision makers that FM is actually very important. So we probably have to have a stepwise strategy, and to make FM important, to teach people that this partly invisible field is actually affect people's lives. Okay. But we also have a structural problem in the FM industry. It's quite short-term by nature. The suppliers live with short-term contracts, and it's very tough competition among those. And it's difficult to establish research across companies, because it's company secrets, it influences the company's competitiveness, because it's very often cutthroat competition for the big contracts.
But don't you think we should try to approach and to work together and to strengthen the relationship? And because it's theoretically it's easy through the EURFM. Okay, 3 minutes left.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Please.
In NTNU, we're very aware that practices don't necessarily read our brilliant journal articles, So we are trying to think of ways in which we, in which to make them much more accessible. But using the EuroFM as an outlet, maybe we could start to try and develop some sort of very kind of key findings, one-page things to show the many industries and practices that are involved in EuroFM, the kind of work that we are doing, rather than kind of give them like, oh, you should read this article. It's very interesting. Just give it in the format that is something that they would like to at least digest, and if they want to read more, they can then afterwards read the article.
Okay. One bullet point as conclusions from everyone. Just one. One bullet point, one idea. Not? As conclusion of this roundtable.
Yeah, I think FM is a very important field, but we have to make it important even for people outside the community, and to make the others realize the implications.
No?
We had in January our annual conference of building owners and clients, and in there we had this research paper section, and there was young doctoral students or different kind of students. They were telling about the research, and we learned that it was very interesting, and all the participants were very anxious to hear what is going on in the research sector, and I think that was very, very nice.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, very shortly, I believe it's very important to be innovative and to think forward, to push the boundaries of our industry.
Carmen?
Yeah, like I think the discussion was indicating that we are kind of thinking across the life cycle, and I think like facility managers are like not just looking internally at the discipline, but they are reaching out as well to other disciplines.
Okay. A last idea from my point, to promote the relationship and to push to work together and take advantage from synergies through EuroFM, and encourage all the attendees to use the collaborative work to exchange experiences, ideas, and to open new ways of collaboration. It has been a pleasure to share with you this roundtable, and thank you so much for waiting patiently with us. Thank you so much. Matthew? I don't know if you have decided to come to Madrid. Yes?
Still thinking about it.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everybody, for participating. We're going to have a very quick 5-minute changeover. We're going to get rid of the configuration of the chairs, and there's going to be more formal presentations. There'll still be a single poster, but the researchers will be giving a 10-minute presentation each. On the program, it shows it as one block. We are going to split it into 2 blocks, so you're not sitting there for the whole time. There'll be 5 presentations, then we'll have a comfort break, and then there'll be another 5 presentations. So if you need a quick comfort break now, we'll have 5 minutes just to change the headsets over for the next group, and then we'll reconvene in 5 minutes. Okay? Thank you very much. So, guys, you just cut my mic off. Okay. Thank you for everybody that is still here. Well done. You're in it for the long haul. Hopefully some people will come back in. As soon as you say the word break, everybody disappears and starts talking again. So hopefully people will start to filter in very shortly. So the next session, we're going to have 5 poster presentations from 5 researchers. They're going to have 10 minutes each, and we may introduce 1 or 2 questions per poster. We'll see how we go with time. The first person will be a person from Technology University in Denmark, a rising star for sure, Esmir. Technology University of Denmark have a very long-standing research program, and Per Anker Jensen, which some people may have heard of, is a very established researcher there, and it's really nice to see a new breed of people coming through and doing some great research there. So I'd firstly like to introduce Esmir Mazler, who's going to discuss his research. Okay? Thank you very much, Esmir.
Well, thank you. So,
the app is still available. If you have any questions for Esmir, you can put them in now, and it will be coming up on my tablet. So if there's any questions you have, put them through the app, and then I'll see them. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. So, did you know that the average energy consumption in the non-residential sector is at least 40% larger than in the residential sector? And that more than 50% of this energy consumption comes from offices and retail trade buildings. So, why is it like this? Well, it's partly due to the fact that many professional organizations dealing with real estate meet challenges in proper energy management of their facilities. We all expect nice thermal comfort and daylight and lighting in our offices, but these demands require energy. Energy that quite often, unfortunately, is overconsumed because companies, they mostly focus on how much energy they use, but they also lack deeper insight on how and when the energy is consumed. So, what can we do about that? Nowadays, I use my energy to study how real estate organizations can use IT systems to get deeper insight on energy management and thereby improve energy performance in their buildings. My point is that the IT systems, in combination with valid consumption data, can be used to improve energy management in real estate organizations. However, the road to getting there is quite complex, since successful IT implementation involves many different stakeholders. The aim of my story here today is to demonstrate how integrated workplace management system, or just called IWMS, and energy management system, EMS, can be used for improving energy management. This story that I'm going to talk about here today is based on field observations and document studies provided during the implementation of these systems in a public real estate organization in Denmark. My story today is about the Danish Building and Property Agency called the Bygningsstyrelsen, or just Bygst, who is currently in the process of implementing IWMS and EMS. Bygst was established a few years ago by consolidation of several governmental agencies and is therefore still undergoing organizational changes. The agency has a core business to provide offices and research environments for its customers, such as ministries, universities, police, and the courts. Bygst, they solve their tasks by owning and renting out buildings to the state institutions. The agency has over 300 employees that manage 1,800 leases covering more than 4 million square meters of building area. About 1.2 million square meters are private leases and public-private partnerships. 2 million square meters are used by the universities, and approximately 800,000 square meters are office buildings. The agency has a characteristics of a silo organization, which means that each department functions as an individual unit, and the employees spend therefore a lot of time in maintaining many diverse IT systems. Their current IT system landscape is diverse due to former reorganizations, different employee needs, working cultures, and local IT solutions emerged over many years before the consolidation. This unfortunately also means that the same type of data about buildings is updated individually in each system that they have currently, which leads to missing coordination and poor data quality. BUXT therefore needs more consolidated IT system landscape that can reduce the amount of IT systems, but also to secure consistent data and consistent and valid data across the entire organization. So, as you can see it here, the strategic goal is to move away from this silo organization and build up a strong data-driven knowledge organization. By implementing IWMS and EMS, BUXT wants to combine data, knowledge, and professional experience to change the organization and deliver better customer service. It's important to mention here that BUXT does not consider this implementation as a definite IT project, but more as an organizational change process consisting of several minor implementation projects. And one of them is energy management. So when it comes to energy management, the aim is to ensure valid energy data and increased employee satisfaction with new IT systems, but also to provide better customer service and deliver energy savings for the customers. The design solution that you see in findings is developed to support different stakeholder needs on energy management inside and outside of BUXT. The design solution includes 3 parts: IWMS, EMS, and web service solution. IWMS is a master system on building data, and EMS manages consumption data and meter readings and does data analysis, visualization, and reporting. Web service solution is an add-on module to EMS and displays individual consumption for BUXT tenants and their facilities managers, not to forget them. What you also can see in the model is that this EMS solution is used mainly by BUXT energy specialists that need deep insight on energy performance in each lease unit, building, and property. The consumption readings were earlier collected in different IT systems by using data loggers, automatic meter readings, and manual meter readings. This reading process caused data inconsistency because of different reading formats, different data frequencies, and also because of technical failures. Today, 95% of electricity, 65% of heating, and 35% of water consumption in office buildings is reported directly to EMS from the utility companies by remote readings, and this implementation process is still ongoing. So, by combining data from IWMS and EMS, EMS can also calculate energy consumption for each tenant and provide KPIs like consumption per square meter on different building levels, from lease unit to buildings and to properties. IWMS receives aggregated monthly consumption data from EMS and calculates greenhouse gas emissions. This data is available to relevant employees at BUXT for reporting purposes on strategic level. The customers and their facilities managers on the other side, they have access to their individual energy consumption through the web service solution, where they can log in and see their heating, electricity, and water consumption. And they can actually also compare it with the expected consumption. So, even though the systems will first be fully implemented by the end of this year, we have observed that several goals for energy management are already realized. For example, the agency and their customers in office buildings have now access to valid energy data that is provided from by the utility companies. And the agency also provides better customer service through this new web service solution. As you can see in the right bottom corner, the facilities managers and the customers have now deeper insight on energy consumption and can, for instance, see how much energy is used during working hours, outside of working hours, and in weekends. In this specific case, you can see, for instance, that 42% of electricity in this office building is used outside of working hours, which encourages for further analysis of energy performance in this office building. So, to summarize, implementing new IT systems plays a key role in the organizational change at Byggst. The implementation of IWMS and EMS is used for standardization of business processes and is expected to improve interoperability, transparency, and also data reliability. In the end, there are two things that I would like to highlight from our research paper. First one is that when implementing new IT systems in facilities management, think about which business processes they need to support and how they are actually going to do it. Do you need the system to be designed for your current practice or maybe for your future needs? A benefit realization map that we have in our research paper could be a useful tool in the implementation process. And last thing that I have here is that by implementing these systems, real estate organizations can improve energy management, but these systems alone, they are not some magic wands that can do all the magic for you. Both providers and customers, they must put a lot of effort in the implementation process to make this story become successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esmir. One question for you.
Yes.
You have a very unique funding situation. That you're an industrial PhD student.
Correct.
So for the benefit of practitioners in the room, what can you allude to any of the decisions about why the company funded you to do this research and the benefits they feel they get from doing this research? Because there are a lot of companies out there that do fund PhDs for a particular reason. They see a benefit in the research that they will get from it, and how they can then directly feed that into their company to gain competitive advantage. So I was just interested in if you were aware of the decisions that they made.
Yeah. Well, very good question. This IT company that is co-founding my PhD is a quite large IT company in Denmark, but the entire facilities management sector is quite new to this company because they have been doing a lot of different IT solutions for public organizations in Denmark, but they haven't been working with facilities management before.
Okay.
So they just entered this market recently, 2-3 years ago, and they decided to introduce this IWMS system on the Danish market. And so they wanted to hear more about facilities management, but the good thing is also because no one has done this IWMS implementation in Denmark before, so it's quite new and there's not much knowledge about it. So I'm quite lucky to have a chance to follow this agency and the implementation process there to see which benefits they actually get from implementing this system. Because energy management is actually only one small part of these benefits that the agency wants to get from IWMS.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, for anybody that's not familiar with a PhD, one reason why people do a PhD is because you're trying to create something that nobody has done before. So, as Esmir says, their company is hopefully going to have something at the end of this that isn't there on the market, and they will have that unique selling point. So, that's a nice example. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next presenter is, you're actually the black sheep of the group. You are from the dark side. You are from the private sector, consultancy. Everybody else that's speaking this afternoon is actually an academic. No, there's one other one who works in the public sector, But Jürgen, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. You're the only one who's actually working in the industry, in the private sector, and it's really fantastic that you submitted your proposal to come under the research track and give us some proper, this is a really nice example of some real research that is being done by a very reputable consulting firm. So thank you very much for sharing it with us, and I'll hand over the floor to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think I'm the oldest student today on stage. 2 months ago, I finished my master thesis at University in Cork in Ireland, also working on a PhD as well. And yeah, so during my thesis, there were many research questions coming up. One of the questions was, what is the role of the facility maintenance in this environment? And yeah, we did a case study, and this case study is based on building life cycle costs. We used the ISO regulation, the ISO 15686, where you will find 2 definitions. The one is a CapEx, capital expenditure. The other one is operational expenditure. And as FM experts, you know, this rule or the statement 20% belongs to the construction and 80% belongs to the operation. What we found in our research was this published chart, which you can see on the top. This chart is from a market-leading company, and the blue area reflects the construction, the building, planning and building costs. The orange one reflects the total facility management costs, and the gray part reflects the energy costs. And here you can see this 20-80 rule. So the blue part, 20%, the orange one, 40%, and the gray part, 40%, 20-80. In addition, as Apleona, as an industrial company, we have many corporate clients, and we decided to do a case study. So we asked many of our corporates, for example, IT companies, retail, automotive, banking, and insurance, to give us some reliable data regarding construction and operation. So we collected the data via questionnaires, and we did some interviews. And now let me introduce the results. Please have a look on this chart in the middle on the left side. This was the first client which we explored. The color coding is the same like in this chart above. Here you can see we took into account the different decades, from 10 years up to 40 years. Starting with the CapEx part, with the blue part, beginning after 10 years, it's a high portion. But after a while, after 40 years, it decreases. The operational costs, so the orange one and the gray one, will increase over the time. And here you can see after 40 years, we fit this ratio 80-20. We had the same approach with the client B, and here you can see we fit this ratio after 30 years. Then we had 3 other clients down below this chart, where you can see 80-20 will fit after 20 years. So the reason for this difference is the data centers, they have the same availability level, but they have different designs. This is the reason. What are the implications and the results of our study, our research? So the first result is that yes, 80-20 fits in every case, which you can see in our case study, but it is a matter of the time span. So in our case, between 20 up to 40 years, it's different. The second result is that energy is a key cost driver in a building life cycle. In this published chart, you see a portion of 40%. In our cases, it was at least a value of 70%, so a huge difference. The third result, which I find very interesting, is that the total facility management costs, which you can divide into the commercial part, infrastructural part, and technical part, is in total less than 10%. With those results, we have the basis to answer the research question: what is the role of facility maintenance in a data center? And The answer is, from a financial perspective, facility maintenance plays a minor role. But if you take into account the quality and operational excellence, facility maintenance plays a major role. Let me give you one example at the end of my presentation. By end of 2017, there was an outage of an airline, of a flight aviation worldwide. The cause of this outage was an FM technician pushed the wrong button, and then the UPS system failed. After that, the IT failed totally. No flights over 2 days were possible. The direct cost to repair the hardware was a minor portion, but the costs to repair the flight aviation worldwide, and especially the reputation loss for the companies, FM companies, and as well the airline, this was tremendous. They paid 150 million euros to set it up. And here you can see, what is the outcome of our research, of our paper? So quality is more important than the costs. And if you perform maintenance in a data center, you need procedures. You have to do a reliable operation to keep the data center uptime. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jürgen. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, obviously, data centers are incredibly important to businesses. We live in a highly digitalized world. It's crucial that we're being clever in how we manage our data. I appreciate all of these statistics, and I understand from a sustainable point of view and a life cycle point of view that this is really, really important. How aware are businesses of the I don't know, the margins that they can gain, the savings that they can gain, the benefits they get from investing cleverly in their data centers? Is this something that they recognize at a strategic level, or is it something that is just taken for granted still?
So this is the goal of my paper, to bring up this message that the facility management costs are not the major portion. Within my thesis, I developed also a journal paper which is introduced today by my professor in Finland at another conference. And therefore, this content of this paper is how can you ensure a reliable operation by procedures? And this is most important in a data center, to work based on procedures and methods.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so our next presenter is Marit Storup Valen from NTNU in Norway. Marit is actually my new best friend, because Marit owns a wonderful farm in Norway. She grows all of her own produce. And Marit said to me, oh, you should come and visit me sometime. So Marit doesn't know it yet, but my 2 kids, my 2 dogs, and all of my family, we're going to go and visit for a couple of months. Is that okay?
Wonderful.
Excellent.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I will hand over to you.
We love children. So I actually have 4 myself, so yeah. And but today I'm not going to talk about farming, as you already guessed. I will talk about facilities management, and also sustainable facilities management, and how this is actually working in practice. The aim is to present some results from a Nordic project, or a project funded by Nordic Built, and to look at the experiences from Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. The project was started in 2015, and you see the timeline over there. I don't know if I'm going to walk around or how I'm going to stand. But in order to see you all, I'll probably walk around. So the timeline, you see, it started in 2015. We are 4 educational institutions. It's NTNU in Trondheim and Chalmers in Sweden, which is doing a master level degree in civil engineering, and also a part of it is facilities management. And the other 2 institutions from Denmark is Copenhagen Real Estate Academy and VIA in Horsens, that both do bachelor's degree in something they called in Denmark construktør, it's a kind of mix between the civil engineer and an architect, which is interesting though. So we joined forces and tried to collect data on how is the education doing today, how is the practitioners' need for future competencies, and also it was a goal to strengthen the competencies in the Nordic countries. Okay, so how did we do this? We started out with some workshops, and we have had 4 workshops altogether during these 4 years, both with academics, researchers, and practitioners. Then we had a case study, as you can see the pictures there, for renovation projects or refurbishment projects with sustainability issues, and did in-depth studies and interviews with them and look at the challenges. And today I will going to present the challenges with these 4 projects, and also look at why they were not really successful, or in terms of looking at sustainability. The project was having a focus on the user aspects of environmental sustainability. And just to mention the 4 projects, the first one is the university building as an office building and an educational building for students and staff at Chalmers. And they had an ambition that it should be integrated, both the students and the staffers should be integrated to working together, and it should be a high level of sustainability, not only low energy efficiency, but also social aspect. You should nudge the people to go and eat vegetarian food and so on. So it's also this social aspect was there. The second one was a social housing in Denmark, where the residential were having some indoor climate issues, so they renovated the building and was looking at how it was improved. The third one was so-called Acre Housing in Copenhagen, which is an interesting case because it was built in order to get a low-cost housing for people that was interesting to contribute with some maintenance and operational costs. In that terms, getting low rent. And the fourth one is the Hotel Britannia in Trondheim, which is a very fancy old hotel, but it's been renovated for 120 billion Norwegian kroners, which is a lot. And they wanted this to become a very modern, but still keep the old style of the hotel, and with a luxury feeling, but also very social, sustainable hotel. Anyway, so that was the goal, and we were interviewing the owners, we interviewed the users, and we also interviewed the FM suppliers. So the results was that if we're talking about technical solutions, if you're talking about energy efficiency and finding solutions for that, if you're talking about reducing waste, reducing water, this is what most FM providers think is sustainability. However, they were very good in implementing that. So we concluded that that is not the main issue. The challenge was that the users were not, where they were listened to in one way, they might have been involved in the early phase of the planning or the design of the project. But they were not integrated when it comes to the operational phase. So, for instance, for the social housing that was renovated, the indoor climate was fixed in a way, but the user was still complaining. Why? Because it wasn't a system that was handling information to show, telling the residential, the user, that this was actually fixed. They could tell them there were no indoor climate anymore, but they still complained. So that tells us that it needs to be some dialogue or a channel for communication between the FM provider and the user. Case one, the university, which was really the educated people and the student. They were very much engaged in the process. They were involved to give solutions, how to deal with this. In the end, they ending up feeling not listening to, so they end up not being working at the office, which is not what was the main goal. It was supposed to be a merge between the students and the workers. And the hotel, that had the idea that we don't know the guests how they were going to behave, so we don't really involve them. So in that terms, the social, it was only the FM provider that was able to give some advice in the design process. However, their advice was not listened to either. And the last one, the Acre Housing, which has the goal that the user itself should be employed or taking some course of maintenance and so on, was a good idea, which works in the beginning, but then people moved out and new one came in and they didn't really want it to contribute. So in that case, it was more the thing that to uphold the motivation of the user to contribute. So what we can see is, in order to find or success with sustainable FM, we see that the FM role needs to take a new approach in terms of, we call this a changing agent, or it needs some collaborative requirements of the FM provider. And in that collaboration skills, that is nothing we deliver today at the educational institutions. Collaboration, social skills, how to facilitate the process in a good way, and so on. So that we think needs to be in the future. Also, sustainable FM is more than a technique. It's a proactive role. It includes both the technical side and the social side. And that might be a challenge, but it's possible if you are aware of that. And the last one, involvement of the users and clients, is nothing you just checked, I've done that. It's an ongoing process, and it's when the building are designed or refurbished, the user is the one that should be involved and engaged, because there is also the one that can contribute to lower the measures when the building are in use. So this leads us to a lot of new stuff to implement in the educational situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marit. So I think this is quite a common issue really across many countries, many industries, and I really like the timeline on your poster. But do you have any intentions to progress this to compare against any other sectors or any other countries, because a lot of this is very common?
Yes, do you have any research funding?
Possibly,
yeah,
and I'm sure there might be some others as well.
I agree with you, because we like to continue this, and especially because we like to, maybe we're thinking of a Nordic FM education would be good, or even European FM we could, because I see this in all other countries as well.
Well, I think if there's anybody in the room that would like to try and carry this on, and it's possible to develop it, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Oops. Okay, our next presenter, Koen Heibers from Saxion University of Applied Sciences. Koen, I now have a very unhappy wife because of you. Koen has three children, right? So we were talking before, and Koen didn't know this, but I actually have 2 children, and my wife is expecting another one.
Okay.
And Koen said to me, the key is what you need to do when you get your 3rd child is buy a speed bike. Yep. So now I've just phoned home saying I need a speed bike, and now my wife is very freaked out. So thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it.
What you also could do is take a look at the football, and when you have 2 kids, and you have a one-on-one defense, and now you have to run a little harder, so you have a zone defense.
Okay.
So it's, well,
so there's lots of benefits. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, the theme is once upon a time in facility management land. But what if I say that facilities are not important at all for student success, the uses of the buildings of education? We all know that when you take a look at the office buildings and the working environment, what sort of environment is your favorite environment? In which area are you productive? Which ambiance is adding value to your performance? We all heard today that our daily work is changing. This comes from other demands, other output. And so the new way of working becomes accepted in professional education. In professional situation. But I would ask the question, is it also in education the case? Well, my name is Koen Huybers. I'm a lecturer at Saxion University of Applied Sciences. And after working as a building engineer and project manager in construction, I found a challenge of teaching young professionals in the construction management program in the built environment. And I like to describe my way of teaching as combining my experiences with knowledge and applied science. And I also, I saw that the whole way we are teaching is changing. Personally, I don't use the word teach, I rather say transferring knowledge and experiences and creating learning opportunities. Well, to provide these learning opportunities, to facilitate them, we have to take a look at the basic spatial needs. They are also changing as well. So when we take a look at the developments in office work environments, where do you feel comfortable? I saw in the lunch break that a lot of you were working on a laptop in this area. Did you feel comfortable? How about now? Do you now feel comfortable? I would be very happy if a small part of this, of my story is remembered by you tomorrow. But how about my students? What do they experience? If we took the advantage and look at the spatial aspects, would it be of influence on their study success? And that's why I am a big supporter of the new way of learning. Well, I took a look at similar development in office environments, and the adjustable areas were very important for formal and informal settings. This way there were better performances when the facilities are right. When I was doing this literature research, I found some contradictions in my own work. That was the reason to do this research. Well, you can see the pictures over here. The specific open learning space. This is our learning space. I did a case study on this. And perhaps you could flip the other one. Oh yeah, this was the next. Yeah, okay. My aim was to understand the factors of influence on study success. And I wanted to come with strategic starting points for facility and real estate managers. And based on this study, I found out that some initial starting points of projects already finished would have been completely different when there was a good look at the end user, and when they, if they took the opportunity to make a profile of the end user and his or her activities. Well, first of all, I defined the definition of an open learning space. Together with several corporate real estate managers and facility managers of University of Applied Science in the Netherlands, the definition was as follows: semi-public workspaces for students and educational staff, providing space for semi-educational sessions and facilitating meeting and working together. Also, I did a survey on the population. What type of student is the most dominant type? I took a look at the personality, and I took a look which learning style is most dominant. This gave me a more insight in the population. These outcomes I reflected on a focus group of lecturers experienced for several years with this type of student. Also, I took the National Student Survey to compare outcomes. And this way, I got a little bit inside information about the students' way of working and their coming and goings. Also, I initiate some focus groups to ask them what aspects do you find pleasant. Do you consider the open learning space as a home base? Do you travel to the university and to do some group work over there when there are no scheduled classes? And of course, I gave them also a little bit of homework. I'm still a teacher, right? So that's what teachers do, giving homework. I asked them to provide or to design a mood board to express the most important preferences and spatial aspects regarding open learning spaces. And you can see an example of one of my students. I also did some observations, like a quiet and humble fly on the wall. I did some observation, and it was a very difficult part, especially for me, because it's hard for me to be humble. And in this way, I got a good view of what sort of activities were taking place, and what is the appearance of the area, and how does it function. Well, combining outcomes, I've drawn a few conclusions, and when you take a good look at the ranking of facilities in the National Student Survey, it's quite low, but when you are asking students about the area where they do group work, open learning spaces, they rank the space on a other level. So when the facilities and the buildings are ranked satisfactory, doesn't mean that the open learning space provides a good environment. Also, the facility and real estate management evaluations are on a larger scale, and the open learning spaces, they need a different kind of measuring, another treatment on evaluation. And I found that there is no specific alignment between strategy, facility strategy, or real estate strategy, and an open learning space. Remarkable are the preferences of the students. They find functionality the most important, which is obvious, but also the shape of the furniture influences their productivity. Also the coloring, modest colors, and cleanliness is very important for them. Also the proximity to fellow students, other facilities, and lecturers is very important for them. And also plants, as you can see at the mood board, they found very important. From a management point of view, it could be important to take another look at the evaluation, because students definitely want to participate in the designing process. They want also a specific role in the post-occupations evaluation. So the monitoring of the occupation and of the use and of the preferences needs much more attention in the educational area. Because in this world, the world is changing very quickly. Low frequency evaluations gives an ambiguous view regarding open learning spaces. So there are a lot of techniques, applications, censoring, so it is very important. However, also the human censor is very important, also regarding students. In that way, the open learning space, due to the fact that it's providing space for fast changing education opportunities, must become responsive. And to increase student satisfaction and student productivity, a fit for use has got to be the scope of the facility management. Because, and I have some experience, it happens all too often that a designer has already a finished plan without, really surveyed the end user. And in this way, you can get some into the DNA of the end user. It provides you with, valuable information, but it's also fun. Thank you.
In the UK, our student fees are very, very high. I'm sure some of you are familiar. So an undergraduate student will pay £9,000 a year to go to university in the UK. It's quite expensive. So a lot of this stuff now is really, really important to the universities. They put in lots and lots of money and investment, because when students are coming on our open days and new students, and we show them around, they're asking just as many questions to us about what's your course like, what's your program like, versus what's your facilities like? Do you have open plan spaces? Are they state of the art? Do they have this? Do they have that? How important do you think this stuff is to your university in attracting new students? Because a lot of this focuses on existing. Is there any focus there on whether this will have a benefit to new students coming in?
When I take a look at the main building of Saxion, it's a combination of various buildings. During time, some construction and some renovation was taking place. So you see the different shapes, the different rooms. However, and when you take a look at the example of the interior, the outlook of the appearance is important, but it's all decoration. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, the round tables were students. The first year students were very annoyed about the shape. So, nice cleanliness, nice look and feel, but the way the aspects are used, the furniture is used, that needs that needs also focus. Not only the flashy buildings and the nice interiors, but also the set out and the combination of furniture. It's very important.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll certainly be using some of this stuff to show our university.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so we have one more presentation before we take a break. Suvi Nanonen from Tampere University in Finland. Suvi is one of our most experienced researchers, and she reminded me of that earlier on. However, I would say that I love Suvi's work, and I still think it's one of the youngest and freshest minds in FM. So thank you very much, and I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I tried to tell that when I was a student, EuroFM didn't exist. Because now my privilege is to present you a little piece of research connected to campus development, and especially here continuity to new ways of learning and working, so new ways of living, I would say. So this student housing as a facility service study is based on research done with my colleague, and it has ended up to one Finnish intermediate report and one master thesis, and now for this paper as well. And just to take you into this concept of student living, I made a little bit memory journey back to my 18 years old student getting the product which was called student house for myself. I was queuing in the first day in the university apartment queue, and my roommate was for the next year the lady who was just in front of me. So there were no apps to figure out what is the best match with your roommate. We are still friends, and we were very well suitable for the assumptions for that product what we got. First year student, what do you need? Shared room, 2 beds, 2 tables, one kind of a little bit lazy chair, no oven, one cupboard, because the first year student doesn't have anything. We had also telephone, but not the direct landline. We had to always call operator. As well, what we did have, which was not the assumption in that product, we had both of us had boyfriends. So that was really interesting. How did we do all kind of social activities within this little tiny apartment? But that is actually a situation still in Finland, that we have very fixed understanding. What is the first year student living? What is the second year student living? And then only around the 4th year you might have a family, and there is a possibility to have a student flat for the family purposes. And that kind of fixed product was our focus in this study when we got this request that how should we develop a student housing as part of campus development. And this is actually mixing our topic to facilities management, because it is facility manager who is in charge of these nice learning environments. And there should be some collaboration with housing units, because that is one of the very important facility service. What student experience includes either they have to pay of their studies, or if they don't have to pay. So that is the focus. So the research questions was focused on students' demands, and as well we wanted to understand how the supply can help our future student housing development. So we made a survey for students. It was delivered by Student Union, and we got more than nearly 200 responses, and we made some complementary interviews there in order to get some more understanding about the issues what we found out from the survey. Additionally, we had two youth workshops connected to kind of concept testing. So we had their mini student house concept and very community-based concept. And then we discussed also the ideas of off-campus or on-campus living, and we got a very good understanding about the needs of the students. Workshops, another one was conducted in the middle of Finland, kind of country town setting, and another one was conducted in capital area, and there were nice differences also in between them. And finally, we ended up to have interviews with service providers who are in charge of student housing in different parts of Finland, and we discussed about the future needs and the challenges what they are facing. Limitation of this study is, of course, the situation that we are in Finland. We have different kind of system for student housing than, for example, in US, but still I think there are some important findings which can be shared. And one of them was this the 4-student profile. So when I was thinking of myself as an 18-year-old student, I was exactly this home sweet home person, first home, my own home, no mother, no father, but and my roommate was a bit older, so it kind of bigger sister, older sister there was. But anyway, it was my identity. Even I had this one little cupboard I was bringing there, the most important things which were kind of my own identity. So that's one student profile which still, of course, exists. And the other one, let's say pretty typical and maybe quite sustainable from 1982 when I started, is this place to sleep, kind of bachelor box. But I think why students might not stay so much at home is due to the fact that they are not only studying, they are not only having hobbies, but they are also all the time working. So they actually need only a place for kind of storage and a good bed to sleep, and the life is happening somewhere else. But the more important profiles we found from these hedonistic lifestyle profiles, they do appreciate their own flat. It doesn't have to be big or large, but they want to have high quality facilities around. They want to be Jamie Olivers. They want to have their all digital lectures and streamline sessions with their colleagues from the nice screens, so that the social areas around the flats are not like something like that with a little one microwave oven, but really good stuff around them. And as well, we found these mobile lifestyle students, pop-in, pop-out places. They had established their family somewhere else, work-life balance, countryside, wife has worked somewhere, kid is already, the little child is already there. They come and go to the campus. Too long time to stay in the hotel, it is expensive. As well, too long time to stay with a friend of you 3 days a week, it is a little bit too much. They would like to have kind of campus hostel. These 4 profiles have been a lot in discussion now in Finland, and actually we are now applying this service dominant logic in the way that we are stating that we should go towards student dominance logic, both in campus development and student housing as one part of living as service concept. We need flexible alternatives to be provided for our students and concepts which are integrating co-learning, open kind of spaces, as well as co-living. These apps, which we saw, for example, neighborhood apps there during one of these breaks, they are the ones which are helping us to create this kind of concepts. Service ecosystem and service platforms are needed because students were also appreciated campus, university, teachers, training, everything, but also what are the services in the neighborhood. So they were thinking of all surroundings over there. So sharing economy is something where do the youngsters now lean on. Different student profiles to user involvement and co-creation, and as well, not only campus as a living room, but campus as a service. These are the steps towards the student dominance logic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suvi. I think it's a fantastic study, and I love the profiles. I think they're really, they bring home a lot to me.
Who are you?
Who am I? Wait,
yeah,
it was a while ago now. I don't know, I kind of like to think I was more of a Jamie Oliver kind of guy, quite good in the kitchen, but really that was just a fantasy. One thing I'm interested in is the procurement of these kind of services or these facilities. So in Finland, is this funded by the universities? Is student housing predominantly coming from the university, or is it privately funded and then contracted to the university, or is it a separate market altogether?
Our state is supporting students in student housing. So it's university is university, and then housing is housing, and it's supported by state.
Yeah, okay. So in the UK now, well, certainly in Liverpool John Moores University, student accommodation is predominantly private. There are private companies putting lots and lots of money into it. And if you think about the old-fashioned debates around in-house versus outsource of any of our services, I'd say universities in the UK, now more than ever, they're outsourcing these scenarios to specialists who say, yeah, we know about student housing, we can help you with that. But what I'm interested in is, are they doing this kind of research? And it's something that I want to take back and work with those housing providers and see what they're doing. So I think it's a really nice study.
Exactly, and I think this has been a topic this spring also in every Scandinavian country I've been visiting. Student housing in England as well, yes, hot topic. Good examples, we have collected few to our paper. For example, in the Netherlands, the student hotel kind of setting. So students are one of core customers, but just like people coming and going are feeling so that it should stay affordable for students. And so you have to integrate these kind of different concepts.
But interestingly, this hedonist lifestyle, the pink one, the more luxury one, there is right by our campus, they're just building a brand new multi-story block, and it's called luxury student accommodation, and they're appealing to that. It seems like they're appealing to that market group. But if you're interested in a case study, it'd be interesting to know if that is their market, because it certainly looks like that on the brochures.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Okay, right, thank you everyone. So we're going to have a comfort break now. We're going to have a 10-minute comfort break, so get yourselves refreshed. Hopefully you'll return. I hate giving breaks because I know what my students are like. And then we'll come back and there is another set of presentations. We're going to change over the headsets. And I hope you found that first set interesting. There's lots of unique studies going on and you can take pieces from it. And there is more to come. So thank you very much. Okay. If anybody can hear me outside, please come back in. I beg you. Who said that? Okay, we're going to get started. We've got 5 more presentations to go through. The first one is, I suppose you have a very common profile for any researcher. You were born in Wales, which is a small country in the UK, and you live in Norway, very typical. And you like to explode beer, is that right?
Yeah, I made the first ever weaponized beer, but like any great invention, it was by accident.
Okay, perfect. A typical FM researcher, ladies and gentlemen. So Dave Collins from NTNU, he's going to kick us off for this next half.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? My voice doesn't normally need amplification, so that still doesn't tell me whether the microphone is working or not. Yes, I did once make beer that exploded, and if this had been a munitions conference, I'd have had a very different pitch today. And I come from a very, very different sector, really, of FM in a way, because my background is social sciences, originally. And I kind of fell into FM by accident. And I'm doing a PhD in architecture, and I love it when people ask me, and they say, oh, PhD in architecture? Have you built anything I'd recognize? And I go, right, you know in London, the Shard, the big office building? They go, yeah, I go, nothing to do with me at all. And I was at a conference in Denmark a couple of years ago, and a guy said to me, where did you do your architectural education? Minecraft. So enough about that, and I'm today talking with you about green leases eventually, but today, we're talking about stories, and I'll give you a story that is linked to green leasing, even though it might not seem it. So, once upon a time in FM land, I was on a plane the other day from Amsterdam to Sofia. And I was on the plane, and a lady comes up to me and says, would you like a drink? And I said, oh, yes, please. I'll have a Coca-Cola, please. She went, we haven't got Coca-Cola. No problem, no problem. I said, anything fizzy, anything with bubbles in it, So she gave me red wine. That's the face of a man who got served red wine by accident. Now, you might not think this is related to green leasing, but it is. Now, for those of you who do not know what green leasing is, there's not really a standard definition, but a definition that's fairly widely acknowledged is from the Better Buildings Partnership, the British chapter, where they say that it is a standard form lease with environmental clauses that positively impact the sustainability of the buildings that they are employed in. Now, most of you in this room know the statistic that 40% of emissions in Europe come from the built environment. A lot of those are from offices, and green leases are mainly used in offices. And to give an example of how important it is to crunch these numbers down, that if you take a computer, PC, laptop, whatever, and it's on for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the person that uses that computer works 5 days a week, 8 till 4 or 9 till 5, that means for 75% of the lifetime of that device, it is not being used. So in offices, we have great potential to crunch down energy consumption issues and all these sorts of things. But we need to all be talking about the same thing if we're going to make a difference. And my talk to you today is about terminological challenges associated with green leasing and green leases. Because we're not really using the same words in the same way all the time. I mean, for example, we have green leasing, we have green leases. The Americans call it energy-aligned leasing. So in Norway, we don't call it flube, we call it grønnelæreavtale. We have a word that doesn't sound like it came out of the mouth of the Swedish chef from the Muppets. And so I decided that I would have a look and see how we're using the terms green leasing and green leases. Is there a difference, and how commonly are we using them? So the first thing I did was have a little look on the web. It's a bit of desk research. I didn't research desks. I sat at my desk and looked at stuff and drank a lot of coffee and nearly had a stroke. That will happen at some point, I have no doubt. So I went on the web, and for practice-based, I was interested in also looking about the difference between practice and academia. For practice literature, I went on Google and looked for all sorts of documents that use the term green lease and green leasing. For academic literature, I looked at academic journals, and I also went on Google Scholar, which is a really big search engine for academic literature, to see if I could find also mentions of green leasing and green leases, to see how we are using them. So what did I find out? to start with, so first of all, I had to, before I started to analyze this, I needed some benchmark definitions of what these things were. So I don't usually like to use notes, but I'm going to read you some quotes, so I need my piece of paper. So first of all, I looked at dictionary definitions of leasing and leases. So in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a lease is a contract by which one party conveys land, property, and services to another for a specific time, usually in return for a periodic payment. And for leasing, it says, the hiring out by one firm, the lessor, of an asset to another firm, the lessee, in return for the payment of an agreed rental. So what we're looking at here is that a green lease is a papery thing that lets you have access to a building that your solicitor will go through with a fine-tooth comb. And leasing is the act of physically leasing out a building to somebody who wants to use it. So how are we using these? So first of all, looking at leases, in academia, I discovered that actually, if we're using it pretty much in that way. When we talk about green leases, we're using them as documents. It's almost universally, with some exceptions. So in Australia, they are doing some fantastic work on green leasing and green leases, amazing research. And they often talk about green lease schedules. And the way that is different from a lease contract is that a green lease schedule is the process by which preparing a building and preparing the process to employ a green lease. So it may lead to a green lease, but it's not one. When it came to practice, we also found they were using it fairly universally, actually, that people were mostly talking about a green lease, with a couple of minor exceptions. Once again, going up actually a little bit back to Australia again, where the Australian Better Buildings Partnership quite often use a green lease in the context of a sustainable facilities management service, and they talk about a green lease being having facilities management kind of clauses in it that mean you've got to use more sustainable FM provisions, which is a process. So that was fairly interesting. And green leasing. So how's that going down? Once again, much to my complete surprise, there was relative understanding that it was a process and not a document. So in academia, I actually found 0 instances where the term green leasing was used to describe a document. It was pretty much 100% of the time used to describe the process of preparing a building, renting out a building, advertising a building that can be leased in a green way. And a green leased building doesn't necessarily have to have a green lease. So they are quite separate. For practice, this was actually an occasion where there was a bit of difference. So about 70% of the time, there were process-related discussions in practice about green leasing, but with one notable exception in my research. So what I found was that the Institute for Market Transformation, a big American institute that is probably doing some of the best practice-based research on green leases and green leasing in the world, they used green leasing specifically in the context of it being a document. They talked about leasing as in the development of the lease itself. And this was, I mean, all this information I have given you now came from lots and lots of sources. So when I when I was looking at the word green lease, when I was looking for academia, I found 578 hits relating to that term. For practice, 49,000. That was a fun afternoon. That's why I had so much coffee that I nearly had a stroke. For green leasing, 216 response hits. For practice, 111,000 responses. But it's not as scary as it sounds. I pared it down to only 36,000 with a little bit of effort. So, you know, it's, at the end of the day, doing this sort of document research, you know, it keeps me off the streets, you know, keeps me off drugs, beating up old ladies, all that sort of thing. So, to conclude, what did I come up with? I found that for the most part, there is synergy in terms of how we're using these terms, that we are using them correctly. And my worries, and the point of me writing the paper that maybe we weren't using these definitions correctly, was mostly unfounded. There are some differences, so we need to have something more universally understood. But actually, we're making the right noises, and people like me researching green leases in FM, and people in architecture looking at these things, and people in practice, if we can make sure we're singing from the same hymn sheet, then we can do great things. And more importantly, we won't end up with red wine when we've asked for Coca-Cola. Благодаря. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dave. Okay, so this has been quite a thorough literature review, and if anybody, any researchers in the room are doing literature reviews, this is a nice example of how to do that. What's the next stages now then? So you're looking at green leasing in FM.
Yeah.
Is the next stage now to look at the level of implementation of these leases? Or where do you go with this?
Yeah, I think that's a really important discussion. I was in Sweden a little while ago and was having this discussion with somebody because as part of my PhD research, I went to visit people who had sustainable buildings, and I said, do you have a green lease? And they said, no. But then you ask them, and does your lease have sustainable clauses? And they went, yes. So I think that there is a real illness called green lease denial disorder that is out there in the industry. And that's because I think green leasing has an image problem. It's got the problem that people think it's burdensome and it's unattractive and it's so much effort for so little gain, which isn't true. So I think the next stage is to try and improve the image of green leasing a little bit. That's for practice to do. But for us, it's to find ways of easing that implementation and making it more attractive, which we also need to do in cooperation with green building councils, with BREEAM and all others. And I think also we need to make sure that we understand the incentives are different. So the reason to have the attractiveness of a green lease is very different from a landlord and is very different for a tenant. And if you want to know more about that, read my articles. I've done a bit of research on that. That's for another conference.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you very much, Matt.
Appreciate that. Okay, our next presenter is the second protege from DTU in Denmark. We have Helle Rasmussen, and you are actually my new parental advisor because I know you have 4 kids and definitely no speed bike, right? You don't own a speed bike, good.
Have one.
So Kuhn, you're sacked. Sorry, I'm now employing Helle, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, hello, it's nice to be here. And my presentation, so now you can see on the screen, has the same title as the paper that Per Anker Jensen and I did for this conference, which is called Tools and Methods to Establish a Feed-Forward Loop from Operation to Design of Ships and Large Buildings. It's an empirical study, including 5 expert interviews, a literature review, and a workshop. Actually, we did 2 other interviews just after the deadline of the paper, but just to avoid any confusion, let's just stick to the 5 for now. The topic of knowledge transfer from operation to design of new buildings is not new in FM research, but it seems still rather unsolved in practice. And to shed new light on the topic, we bring in 2 new aspects. One is design of large ships, and the other is 2 different approaches to knowledge transfer. And we have borrowed these 2 approaches from the research field of knowledge management. One approach is the technocratic approach. Those committed to this approach will tell you to codify as much as you can of your tacit knowledge. And then find a good storage place, and that explains the little suitcase on the poster, and send it to a receiver. He or she will then unpack your now explicit knowledge and apply it and integrate it into, in my research case, a building design. So that's very easily done. But this is where the people committed to the behavioral approach will get up and refuse that this would be possible. They argue that knowledge cannot travel outside the human body, or outside the human mind or brain, I suppose. They consider knowledge to be more alive, more maybe like a bird, flying around, not easily captured and stored, and certainly not in a suitcase. They say in order to transfer knowledge between us, we'll have to meet each other, we'll have to spend time together and make sense of the knowledge together. And the literature on knowledge transfer from operation to design of buildings are mostly based on the first approach, the technocratic approach. And that was a very short version of these 2 knowledge transfer approaches. And the other thing that we bring in is the comparison with large ships. And large ships, or projects of new large ships and large buildings, share a lot of difficulties. They both deal with very complex physical structures, and they go through similar stages of idea, design, construction, and operation. And perhaps most important, at least for this study, the operation stage is not only more costly in a financial way, it's also the stage that has the highest negative impact on the environment. Consequently, both industries ought to be very interested in transferring knowledge from operation to design to increase facility performance in operation. But we were surprised to find that only very little research has been carried out on knowledge transfer in ship projects, which gave us nothing to compare with. So we decided to ask them and ask them what tools and methods they use to transfer this knowledge. And especially we were curious to see if we could find tools and methods rooted in the behavioral approach, since we found that this was a bit absent in the literature in our field. And here's what we did. We conducted 5 semi-structured interviews with experts from the shipping industry based in Denmark. And they were either ship designer or ship owners, meaning building clients. And that gave us a list of, from that we developed a list of tools and methods used in projects of new ships. And to have a comparable list, for building projects, we consulted the literature. And then we compared the two, analyzed similarities and differences, and finally, to validate our findings, we held a workshop with practitioners from both industries. And what did we find? First of all, it was clear from the interviews that it's not sufficient to look only at tools and methods, even though this was our original mission. We simply wanted to gather 2 comparable lists of tools and methods. But besides tools and methods, we also need to look at other things of importance to transfer knowledge. And that's what we have called the general conditions. So our findings are spread on 5 categories, as you see on the poster, where A is general conditions, similarities and differences, and B, tools and methods used by both or one of the industries. And here's only listed a very few examples, and in the paper the rest of the examples are, so there's a very good reason to read the paper. The first example of a general condition which is similar in the 2 industries is the internal organization of the building client. In both industries, the building client very often consists of 3 parts playing an important role for establishing the loop, and that's the top management, the operation division, and a building client division. And the interviewees describe the cooperation and interaction between these 3 parties as crucial to establish a loop. And they mention conditions as team spirit or being located next to each other and having frequent meetings as important factors of establishing the loop. And then that fits with the arguments of those committed to the behavioral approach. But there's also a difference between the 2 concerning the building clients, and that is that nearly all ships are private owned, except for a few passenger ferries. But it's not unusual that large buildings are public owned, for instance, hospitals or universities. And this makes a difference on, for instance, how a building client can set up a design team. So how to choose the members of the design team, and if the design team can continue designing the next building. So that was a difference in the general conditions. Commissioning is an example of a tool or method. It's used by both industry. Actually, it's exactly an example of a tool which the building industry has borrowed from the ships. But our study shows that it's used slightly different in the 2 industries. So in that way, it's an example that that yes, tools and methods can be shared across the industries and we can learn from each other, but some sort of transformation of a tool or a method is needed in order for it to be applicable to the other industry. The next method to establish a feed-forward loop, or actually the next 2 methods I'll mention in this presentation, is what we have called the onboarding tools, and they're used in the ship projects. And one version is onboarding of operational staff to the design team, and the other is, of course, the opposite, onboarding design staff to a ship already in operation. In the first type of onboarding, a captain or machine engineer or both are brought in from the sea to participate in a design process for a new ship, and this will be a full-time assignment for perhaps a year or perhaps 2 years even. And this offers a unique possibility to transfer knowledge in line with the behavioral approach to allowing both explicit and tacit knowledge to be shared and transferred. And the design staff and the operational staff are given an opportunity to team up and together work on a facility design best fit for future operation, whatever that might be. The study gave some valuable and interesting insights on how to establish a feed-forward loop in the two industries, but we found that the interviewees had difficulties in describing how they deal with knowledge transfer in their everyday life. The next step of our research will therefore include case studies where we will study specific design processes or process of specific cases. And because we still need to gain further knowledge on how we can establish this feed-forward loop successfully to increase facility performance. And an increased facility performance will benefit facilities owners and users, the environment, and of course facilities managers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hella. First question. Did you do those drawings yourself?
Yes, I did.
I think it's a really nice poster and very simple and very effective. Thank you for that. When I first looked at your abstract back at Christmas time, I was thinking ships, buildings. This is quite a strange comparison, but I suppose it's just one big object which moves rather than a stationary one. But they can be constructed very differently, and I know you've shown what the differences are with a ship, what differences with a building, but from what you've found so far, should one be learning from the other a little bit more? Should the practices of ships be used more in buildings and vice versa, from what you found?
No, from what I found, we can learn from each other, really.
Okay.
But I think, they can learn from each other. And one thing I didn't mention because of the time limit was, for instance, life cycle costing, which were used by both industries. But in the building or the construction industry, I see that we use also the term of LCA, so where we consider a wider range of the life stages of a project. And when I listen to the ship building clients, for instance, they still talk about life cycle cost as a very narrow term, including not so much, or actually only construction and operation phase. So they are not talking so much about how to get rid of the ships again, or how they are constructed.
Okay,
yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, we now have Monique. I'm going to try and say you're a bosun call. Yeah? Okay, that's a good guess. Monique was very, very worried that people don't get the link with what Monique's going to talk about. It's around contracts and trust, specifically within PPP contracts.
Yes.
And she was worried about that people wouldn't get the link to FM. I think it has a strong resemblance to FM. And I've done work on other contract forms, and trust is a critical issue within FM. So hopefully you will see the relevance of it, and I'm sure everybody will. So I'll hand over to you, Monique.
Thank you. So I would like to start with an exercise. Imagine you ask one of your suppliers to do one of your tasks. Imagine to do this without any contracts, without rules, without instructions. Now imagine this supplier delivers the best possible result, surpassing your expectation. Not because you told him to, because he really wants to. Because this is what he daily does, and he's really good at it. Sounds possible, doesn't it? Why doesn't this happen all the time? If you look at the picture, do you remember the game where you let yourself fall and the other one catches you? Trusting the other catches you is the foundation of this game. Trust is incorporated in our daily life. At home, you trust your relatives to be there for you. But also at work, you trust your colleagues to help you with important business deals. Therefore, you will probably invest in these relationships to keep the trust developing. But what about the suppliers? Do you do the same with them? Do you invest in the relationships with your suppliers in the same way? Think about it. chances are that in your organization, facility services are partially or maybe entirely outsourced, or that your core business is FM and you deliver facility services for the other organizations. So research shows that 74% of FM is outsourced. It seems that outsourcing these non-core competences is necessary to be competitive in today's complex business environment. So many organizations depend on their suppliers to achieve their goals. You know, trust is not something new. Relations are not something new. Sun Tzu stated 500 years before Christ already this popular quote: "We cannot enter into alliances until we are acquainted with the designs of our neighbors." With this statement, he implies that we need to know and trust the motives of our partners before we enter alliances. Sun Tzu also stated, "One may know how to conquer without being able to do it." He already saw the importance of partnerships, and that partnerships can be used to achieve results somebody cannot achieve alone. So, today, 2,500 years later, trust and relations are still in our daily life. Organizations still use networks, partnerships, outsourcing as important business strategies. But what happened with trust? It appears that in present day, we have replaced this trust with contracts and rules. As a procurement consultant, I daily deal with outsourcing contracts on a daily basis. And it struck me that the contracts are getting thicker and thicker. It is intended to prevent something going wrong. If something goes wrong, we look, instead of discussing about how to solve it, we look together in the rules of the contract. Meanwhile, it seems the problems did not decline. Only the way we solved them became more complex. So, in reality, in practice, indeed, these contracts replace trust. During my research, I read that to achieve better partnerships, which is what we all want, is to achieve better partnerships, it's essential to create trust. Trust is seen as a basis for any cooperation. But however, trust is also very vulnerable and easily broken. Therefore, it should be built consciously. That's the reason why I chose to research this concept of trust development within public-private partnerships, also known as PPP. For the people who don't know it, PPP is a governance of a contract form which outsources all the main components of the value chain, from design, build, finance, maintain, and operating, also known as the DBFMO contracts. And the maintain and operating part are the most prolonged phases of any building, in which also mostly facility managers are responsible. But many non-integrated projects fail to include FM. You already heard it today, a couple of examples, but you probably in your own organization or probably know some building in which there's a misalignment between the design of the building and facility management. PPP tries to solve this by including facility management in the beginning into one integrated contract. My research question was, how does the content of a contract affect trust development in public-private partnerships? Because these facility managers will be responsible for the longest part of the contract, I aim to investigate it for the benefit of FM. My literature study resulted in 7 mechanisms that have an effect on trust development. I conducted interviews with 8 experts on Dutch PPP, and all these respondents mentioned it's so important to trust each other. However, not all also invested in trust development. Their reasons: lack of time, lack of money, but also there were no arrangements in the contracts. So it seemed that you need to arrange something in advance. My study concluded, you can read it also in here, 3 main items. You should, to design the perfect contract that facilitates trust development, you should specify only the technical essentials. You should leave some room for interpretation, focus only on goals. This will make the contract more flexible. One of the respondents I spoke, he mentioned being in year 15 of the contract, that The original specifications were outdated, and even finding the right one was difficult because you cannot find it in this state contract. Second, include relational elements, which most of you will probably do in your contracts, the normal one, the meetings, the tactical, strategic ones. But the most important ones are the informal meetings. You should include some mechanisms such as team building, workshops, knowledge sessions. These, according to respondents, can be used to achieve more personal attention in each other. The respondents mentioned that this created more acknowledging of the other organization. There's a difference between a public and private organization, and understanding this difference helps when you're cooperating together. Don't forget to repeat this during the entire contract, not only in the beginning. And third, you should include a performance management system. Normally, performance management systems are used to achieve penalty or to give penalties or fines or punish the supplier by not delivering things on time. It seems that these penalties don't have effect on a better result. It only have a negative effect on the relation. So you should include a performance management system that positively rewards the performance. So even if you have designed this perfect contract, you're not done. My study concluded that trust development is dependent on all prior experience. Both positive and negative have an effect. Maybe you recognize this in your personal experience when you have ever encountered a problem with a relative or a colleague or a supplier. The way these problems were being solved have an effect on the way you trust this person or company. One of the respondents said, yeah, people deal different with prior experiences. Some people just have difficulties of letting bygones be bygones and have difficulties of letting go and focus again on the future. They get a little bit stuck in the past. So, in the end, it seems that the competences and the intentions of the individuals determine the way trust is being developed. So, if I've convinced you of the importance of trust, and I hope by now, take in mind these three essential aspects when designing the contract. Specify only the essentials of the technical aspect, include relational mechanisms, include a performance management system that positively rewards performance. Most of you will probably be managing different kind of contracts, and in all contracts you can do something about trust development, not only in the PPP contracts. I recommend you to start with your strategic ones. And what I just mentioned, it's about the intrinsic motivation of team members. So you should include team members that are able to cooperate. These are the team members that can address prior experiences, but also can let go and focus on the future again. Second, develop the team, on both sides, on the private and on the public side. Develop the team with the examples I've given, just like team building. And third, create a positive environment. This is an environment where all the individuals feel welcome, feel safe, where people give each other feedback and receive feedback, and most important, where successes are celebrated. So, by now, I hope I've convinced you of the importance of trust and given you some tools to do so. I have one final question. When will you start? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think it's a fascinating area. I think it's a long debated area. I think especially when you think contracts traditionally, it's all about a transactional relationship. The question I have for you is within a PPP especially, when you're looking at a public-private relationship, the goal is always to be driving costs down, the lowest cost contracts. How is trust influenced in that respect by looking at the lowest possible cost? If I look in the UK, for example, at the National Health Service, the NHS, you know, they have to be constantly driving down costs. And that influences the contract relationship significantly.
I'm a procurement consultant, so I deal with this a lot in the beginning, and the organization wants to cut costs, but cutting costs in the beginning doesn't mean you cut costs during the entire project. And that's, I think, the benefit of PPP, because you cannot predict these 30 years of contracts. So finding the cheapest one, now you need to find the best partner that you can do this 30 years partnership with. So yeah, it's a mindset.
Okay. And do you have any plans to compare this from a PPP scenario to different contract scenarios?
Not yet.
maybe a thought?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Okay, I'd like to you all to give a warm welcome to the next speaker. One, because Paul is still an existing student at ZHAVE in Zurich, but secondly, because I think Paul's topic is really cool, and he's hopefully going to do a PhD with me very soon. I asked him at very short notice to think about putting a paper together for this, and I think he's done it with flying colours. So I think I'd like you to enjoy this presentation, and I think it's going to be very interesting for you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. So the future of FM is going to be digital. In future, facility managers will work alongside intelligent personal assistants, or IPAs for short. In fact, we have them actually on most of these smartphones. The like of Google Assistant, Siri, or Cortana already running on most smartphones, smartwatches, or tablets. And they're becoming more and more, or they can do more and more over the time period. So what is an IPA? So an IPA is understood as a digital virtual artificial entity that has one or more electronic user interfaces that allows it to use voice, vision, and contextual information in order to streamline and automate processes and to assist the user in his daily activities. Now, the healthcare industry is seeing major technological developments, especially in the areas of cloud computing, data exchange platforms, wearable technology, data analytics, and artificial intelligence. Especially AI is seen as a huge opportunity for the healthcare industry. Now, drawing on intelligent sensor networks and big data analytics, new socio-technical systems are being developed that allow to create highly interactive hospital environments. These future smart hospitals can automate can exchange entire information flows across different healthcare organizations and automate various services and operations. So at the same time, we're also seeing a need for innovation and ICT solutions in the healthcare industry. There's growing pressure for healthcare systems. If we look at, for example, the Swiss healthcare system, the yearly costs are 70 billion Swiss francs. That is 11% of our national GDP. And these costs, they rise each year by 4%. Now, if you look at hospitals, these amount to about 40% of the total healthcare costs. And interestingly, within those 40% of the healthcare costs, one third of these costs are related to FM relevant services. So obviously, FM plays an important role in introducing or with bringing down these costs. Now, FM organizations see themselves obviously also confronted with fewer resources and increased financial pressure. So there is clearly a need to bring in new innovative technologies such as IPAs. In fact, IPAs are already used in certain hospitals to collect information from data banks, medical systems, or network devices. They can actively monitor patients and detect various activities within the building. Doctors now can input and access medical reports using voice input. And patients use IPAs as medical assistants. And assistant robots are now welcoming patients at hospitals. So what does this mean? We have to look at IPAs in a broader context with other digital systems and devices. Together they form these smart hospital environments. Importantly, IPAs interact as a allow the natural interaction with these environments. So we looked at future scenarios where we looked at future FM scenarios in which IPAs can be used alongside patients and visitors. These could be seen in information management and registration, signage and navigation, transport and logistics, safety and security, or catering. So now that we have a bit of an understanding of the broader context and the technological developments, we asked the question, what are the key prerequisites on a strategic level in order to introduce and integrate an IPA system to process into the processes between patients, visitors, and non-medical support services in Swiss hospitals? So in order to answer the research question, we used a multi-method design. We conducted a 2-round qualitative Delphi study with 7 FM experts that had an overall understanding of processes and digital healthcare. in the first round, we confronted the experts with open questions that they answered. We then summarized all these information, all these answers, and confronted them with all answers from all the experts. In the second round, they were then able to correct, complement, or rewrite their answers. To validate this Delphi study, we also conducted 2 expert interviews with AI experts from major technology companies. To develop the data collection tools and to confront the experts with state-of-the-art knowledge on this IPA technology, we studied 61 blog articles over a period of 6 months. All data that we collected, we analyzed using data matrices. So the findings show us that the following main 4 topics are central to the integration of IPA systems in healthcare. These are governance, culture, processes, and technology. So I'd like to now highlight the main findings of these 4 central topics. So one is governance. Here, first and foremost, it's about delineating the framework requirements, such as the scope of the project and the financial aspects. These include investment security, economic efficiency, and the necessary financial resources. What is advisable is to start with a small use case scenario before launching full-fledged system. A central concern here is obviously data governance. The question here is, who has access to the data and how secure is it? Number 2 is culture. And culture is key when introducing such technology like IPAs. And it all boils down to change management. We need to address the fears of the employees at an early stage. Staff can see their job roles threatened by this new technology. What is also important is to find the right fit of the IPA system with the overall hospital strategy. This reflects also the concerns with patient and visitor acceptance of such technology. Number 3 is processes. This is about designing the processes, how to shape the interaction along the different process steps of an IPA and the different users, such as hospital staff, FM personnel, visitors, and patients. Lastly is technology. Here are 2 main infrastructural premises. These are on the one hand, high-speed Wi-Fi connection across the entire building in order to establish such a system, and this Wi-Fi needs to be secured, as it is likely that data or confidential data is handled over this network. So all things considered, this is not a pure technological debate. In fact, it's a debate about culture, it's a debate about strategy, and it's a debate about management. And we find that culture is the critical factor preventing the proliferation of such technology. We need to understand the attitudes of the different stakeholders. And FM can play a critical role in this, defining the processes, interfaces, and aligning the IPA system with the overall hospital strategy. The FM role will be as a facilitator between these different stakeholders. So I highlighted these 4 important key prerequisites on a strategic level: governance, culture, processes, and technology. Obviously, there's a need for further research. We need to address also the topics of ethical concerns, such as accessibility, usability, control, privacy, and trust. Only if FM can restructure their processes, adapt their infrastructure, and embrace new technology can they face their challenges of fewer resources and increased financial pressure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think you did a great job there. Obviously, we've talked about this a lot, and there is further research to come from this. And we've debated, haven't we, in terms of should this be a technology, do we focus more on the technology and the infrastructure needed, or do we focus more on the management systems and the culture and the communication? And I think, you know, I can hand over to you, but where you mentioned about culture, where do you see this research now going in terms of how we can develop this?
Yeah, so after actually publishing all these findings, I have to say the response from what I've shown from the healthcare industry or from FM in healthcare has been more or less zero. So I noticed that this kind of technology is I'm too advanced with what I'm proposing at the moment, because the main problem is the mindset. when I come up with the idea, most people say that this has, for reasons of ethical concern, or they're too much involved in their day-to-day activities, and this is something that they probably look in a long term. So I think key will be to address that mindset, and that is about culture and strategy. So I think the focus should be on that, because there are also a lot of technology companies that have solutions out there. It's not something that needs to be developed new, but they are also finding it difficult to get into it, into the healthcare system, especially in Switzerland, now to speak. So,
good. Thank you very much, Paul. Watch this space. Hopefully we'll be back in 2 to 3 years and we'll be showing you some examples of how we're implementing this. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, our final presenter is Leo Lanen from IFMEC, the International Facility Management Expert Center in the Netherlands.
Great.
Leo and I know each other very well. We have a collaborative partnership with Liverpool John Moores University. But knowing Leo very well and the innovative entrepreneur that he is, he's been very naughty and he knew he was last up here and he's managed to sneak in a video by talking to these guys at the top here without me knowing. So there is a video in here that we're going to play in a minute as well as the poster. But you do get preferential treatment as you're the last one. So
yeah, as we
I'll let you off.
As we know each other, I was sure I would be the last speaker. And the good news is that after this, you're going to explore Sofia. But still, rest for a few moments, get relaxed. Oh, and yeah, you can start. Okay. Okay, yeah, you can go further on. What you have seen is not new, is it? For me, there are no differences the last 4 years in this area. But what you have seen is a game-changing thing for all those industries. And be sure that there's nothing new, there's only one thing new, that is the way and the speed it becomes normal and available to the market. And that speed, every scientist all over the world agree on that, is not a linear, but is a curve, it's going up. So, and we are going to enjoy this every day from now on. But my question was, what was the impact of all those inventions, ICT-driven inventions, to facility management? Or what should the impact be? And that was the question for 3 years ago. And the answer to that you find in I think the left upper corner. And that was that there is a same way corporations, organizations are going to cope with these game-changing innovations. And what they are doing is, there's only one from cybernetics we know a long time, that is self-management on the operations. So this is what they are going to do, to be more flexible, to be more agile, to be more, what do you say, Scrum, etc. So they are coping with this kind of diversification in the operations. And that has a huge impact to the organization themselves. What you will see is that middle management is gone. You don't need middle management to coordinate when groups are self-managing. And the second thing is that also the technical core is going to diminish. You need them for some legal reasons, but what are they doing? They are using the past to predict. And they are using rules inside to control. And when you are self-managing towards the future, there are two things you hate very much. To be controlled in such a manner, and to be say what you have to do for others. So a lot of the knowledge of the technical core is going to be implemented towards the self-managing systems. And ICT can do that. This is going on for some time, but what I'm saying now was 10 years ago already in the board from Philips and others, because they were knowing what was coming up. But what has that to do with facilities management? Then this is the middle, and this is the good news. Because the support side, focusing to what's going on in the operations, and facility management has done that a long time, and we said, well, we have to be in the board, etc. No, their really force was they were pleasing the operations day by day. So, and there's another thing, the technical core was always looking inside and are making the activities more eager, more cost efficient, more etc., etc. And facilities management has focused on people and activities. And this is the relationship, this is the real relationship which comes for the future. And every corporation who's now in the war of talent is doing this. Okay, when you are looking to this model, I was wondering today, because we had a lot of fantastic presentations here, and I was looking, are they fitting in the model or not? And I was glad to say for myself it is. What is it, for example? Adine Wells, she said, well, I have a problem, because Collier did on durability, and said it is, in their examinations, it's on place 10 with the people inside. And I was glad to hear, because they are in the operation, they don't care about durability. But the good news is, facilities management and the support staff does. And when the strategic apex make towards the European Committee a promise they were going to diminish CO2 or other, and diminish energy, etc., then this is a promise. And the promise will not be done by the operations themselves. They are not interested. But facilities is. And they are taking this very serious, and they can do because they are giving the conditioning environment of the operations. And in this conditioning environment, a lot of the durability goals are already inside. So it's also a little bit of a wake-up call to the European Committee. So you have to go to funding the research of FM when you take durability serious. And there's a serious call towards Brussels. Saying this, look at the model. We have the support staff. I don't say facilities management, I say support staff. We get the suppliers, and we get the operations. And this makes a huge new delta, a new innovation delta. And innovation is the key word in this. And all of the contributions today were in sign of innovation. And that is very, very good to hear. But the innovation has its own rules. And we saw, for example, the DBFMO rule. I was glad to see about trust, partnership, and it's the basis of innovation. Otherwise, in control, only as innovation will die immediately. So there is a huge new field of research between support in-house, support staff, and suppliers on this issue. And you see this at the right side, because this model has a big influence on the scope of facilities management. I will tell you later. But this is one thing. Focus inside on the support staff means a collaboration between facilities management, ICT, HRM, and accounting. They deliver together, they are delivering the services towards the primary process. And this is one of the big, really big things that has to be done. And it has a lot of competences to do so. And in my opinion, facilities management should be in front to do so. We had developed an executive MBA on facilities management, and we renamed it 3 years ago to enabling management, to get facilities managers in charge of the new departments which are making services towards operations, enabling services. And it will be completely different than what is now on the technical core side. Okay, this is the second thing is the between demand and suppliers. We already know partnership and trust, a lot of different contracts coming up. Suppliers among each other have a lot of work to do to bring integration together. We have talked about the BIM and about different same data, different ways of exploiting them. There's a lot of work to do for them. And they need to do it because together with in-house support, they are delivering the best services needed to make innovation inside the company possible. So this is the fourth thing to do. Christian said we need human sensors, and I agree. We need human to translate needs and constantly changing needs towards the company itself. And the sensors are necessary, and they are going to be delivered by suppliers, because the suppliers need them to make their operation most worthwhile. So this is what I had to tell. So I'm very glad to be here and to share. Hopefully you take this model next day, tomorrow, and see, oh, where can we put it together? For me, it's yeah, well, I say FM needs, the professional side of FM is need more than ever. And it has to be delivered inside what I called number 4. But also a new area is coming up, and that is the area of facilities management as resource management. And that is the interaction between suppliers and the in-house support. And the third area is, and that's completely new, is FM as an enabling discipline. Together with HRM, I say, and a lot of systems have to be connected, but this will be the really big issue to get in a completely new position towards the strategic epics. And this will be also a new research area to do so. Google has its mood makers. They work around and they are feeling, how do you okay? Yeah, I'm a little bit tired. So put the light on. And they are going to report that to the board. And nowadays, the FM manager also is a kind of a mood maker. Because of the strategic epic, does not know what is going on in their self-steering operations. And they need to be contacted. And all the lines we have made from the technical core are obsolete. When they are delivering their reports, they are already wrong from the past. So this is really the most wonderful area. So everyone here is happy to be in that delta and have a wonderful future. So this is my message for you to Sofia, to celebrate this tonight and have a good conference tomorrow. And of course, we have to do some of the techniques in our businesses themselves. So please, you can do the what? Doors.
Thank you very much, Leo. Thank you
Okay.
very much. As animated as always, and it was a pleasure to have you. In the proceedings, the papers that we produced, Leo's paper is a little bit different, so it's a viewpoint paper. It's a viewpoint or a vision, and you know, those kind of papers are also really valid within the research world, and I like to see these visionary views, and it's interesting then to see the empirical research we can add to this. I think there's a lot of things we can take from what Leo said as well, in terms of what we had talks earlier by Mark Elchingham around the workplace, and we think of BIFM's name change around workplace and facilities management. And I was talking to somebody earlier on who they were not being negative about the research roundtable, but they were saying that we talk a lot about our involvement with other professions, but in the roundtable we talked a lot about working with architects, working with quantity surveyors, we're working with project managers, etc. But we need to do more work around working with HR, working with marketing, working with IT and accounting, etc. And that's where I think that the future of, you know, working towards this workplace agenda is going to really start to push over the next few years. So I think it's a nice way to conclude what we've done today. So thank you everybody for sticking this out to the end. We are 20 minutes ahead of schedule, so that's fantastic. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. If you haven't picked one up and you still want one, there's a few copies left of the Research Proceedings book. So all of the talks that you've seen this afternoon, there are official scientific papers that have been written, and they've all been printed in a wonderful book. Most of you have taken them, but if you didn't get a copy, come and see me. We'll also be producing a PDF version of it, an electronic version, and that will be on the website next week. Okay? Thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy your evening.